The distress signal repeated every 17 seconds. By the third transmission, entire civilizations had already turned their fleets around. And by the 10th, the dying world stopped asking for rescue. Karen 9 burned beneath black storm clouds as orbital defenses collapsed one by one. Across the canyon cities, millions of Nakari civilians crowded into underground shelters, listening to the same terrible sound echo through every emergency channel. The Vorex swarm was approaching. No speeches. No negotiations. No surrender terms. Only silence between bursts of static and distant screams from the surface. Commander Viren stood on the fortress wall overlooking the canyon roads below. Refugee convoys stretched for miles through the dust while burning warships fell from orbit like meteors. Their allies were gone. The coalition fleets had abandoned the sector 6 hours earlier. Not because they were weak. Because they knew what the swarm did to worlds that resisted. Viren tightened her grip around the rifle hanging at her side as another transmission crackled through command. Unknown jump signatures detected. For one impossible second, hope returned. Ships emerged from hyperspace above the planet. Only 12 of them. Too few for a rescue mission. Too few for a defense fleet. And yet every Nakari officer in the command bunker suddenly went pale. One whispered the name like a warning. Humans. The room fell silent. Even the children nearby stopped crying. Because across the galaxy, humanity carried a reputation older than most wars. A species born on a death world. Predators who survived disasters that would wipe out entire civilizations. And according to every military rumor ever whispered in coalition space, if humans arrived first, someone was about to disappear. Then the lead human warship transmitted a single message to the planet below. Not diplomacy. Not reassurance. Just 5 cold words. Permission to engage without limits. Nobody celebrated when the human fleet entered orbit. That was the first thing Commander Viren noticed. No cheers inside the shelters. No relief across the defense lines. Only fear and confusion. Because the Nakari had heard the stories. Every species in the coalition had. Humans didn't arrive where wars could still be peacefully won. They arrived when entire civilizations were already standing at the edge of extinction. And somehow, that was worse. Far above Karen 9, 12 human warships drifted silently through burning debris fields while the planet died beneath them. Compared to coalition fleets, the ships looked almost primitive. Heavy armored hulls. Minimal lights. No ceremonial markings. Built for war. Not politics. Viren stood inside the command citadel watching tactical projections flicker across the holotable. Red markers spread across the planet faster every minute. The Vorex swarm was breaking through every remaining defense line. Northern canyon cities had already fallen. Eastern refugee convoys were gone. 2 million civilians remained trapped underground with nowhere left to run. And still, the humans hadn't fired a single shot. That silence began to crawl under everyone's skin. Then a coalition officer finally snapped. "They're observing us," he whispered. "Studying the battlefield." Viren looked up sharply. Because he sounded terrified. Another transmission arrived from orbit. No greeting. No diplomatic protocol. Only a request for full planetary terrain maps, seismic records, and civilian shelter locations. The humans weren't asking how to negotiate. They were asking how the planet could break. And suddenly, the room felt colder. Across coalition space, humanity carried a reputation nobody openly discussed. Not because humans were cruel. Because humans survived things that should have killed them long ago. Death world gravity. Frozen oceans. Predator jungles. Global wars. Other species evolved on stable worlds. Humans evolved under constant pressure. That difference changed everything. A young Nakari officer near the back of the room quietly muttered the old saying. If humans are calm, somebody else should panic. Before anyone could answer, the entire fortress shook violently. The holotable glitched. Then came the impact alarms. The swarm had reached the outer canyon walls. Outside, the horizon burned red beneath rolling clouds of ash. Massive biomechanical creatures crawled across the cliffs while living dropships descended into refugee zones below. VRN rushed onto the battlements just as Nakari artillery opened fire. The sound was deafening. Rail cannons split the sky apart. Explosions tore through canyon walls. For a brief moment, it looked like the line might actually hold. Then the smoke cleared. And the Vorex kept coming. Unstoppable. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The swarm adapted in real time. Damaged creatures mutated new armor within minutes. Destroyed assault forms were replaced almost instantly by larger ones climbing over their own dead. Every battle became worse than the last. That was why entire star systems surrendered without resistance. Because fighting the swarm only taught it how to kill you faster. A terrified civilian transport suddenly burst from a lower tunnel entrance beneath the fortress. Families poured out screaming as Vorex drones descended from above. Nakari soldiers fired desperately. It wasn't enough. The creatures slammed into defensive lines with horrifying speed. Then, something hit the battlefield from orbit. Blue fire exploded across the canyon floor. The shockwave knocked soldiers off their feet. For one stunned second, nobody understood what they were seeing. Metal pods. Hundreds of them. Human drop capsules. They crashed directly into the middle of the swarm formation. No species used drop tactics like that. It was suicide. The pods burst open. And the humans charged out immediately. No hesitation. No defensive formation. Only controlled violence. VRN watched in disbelief as armored human soldiers sprinted straight toward enemies twice their size. Rifle fire echoed through the canyon while explosions lit the darkness like lightning storms. One human marine tackled a Vorex creature off a cliff edge with his bare hands. Another kept firing despite half his armor burning. They fought like people who had already accepted death years ago. But the strangest part? They protected civilians first. Human squads moved through the chaos, pulling terrified Nakari children behind barricades while returning fire at the same time. One soldier handed his oxygen mask to an injured alien civilian without even slowing down. Another carried two wounded strangers across open ground while swarm drones chased him through artillery blasts. VRN couldn't understand it. Why would predators risk themselves for another species? Then she heard the human commander speaking over open comms. Calm. Focused. Almost cold. All civilian sectors are now under Earth protection. Earth protection. Not occupation. Not conquest. Protection. And somehow, those words hit harder than the explosions. But deep beneath the planet's surface, hidden seismic monitors suddenly activated. A human officer turned toward the tactical display. Then quietly smiled. Good, he said. They took the bait. The humans were outnumbered before the battle even began. And somehow, that made them more dangerous. Commander VRN watched from the shattered canyon wall as Earth soldiers moved through fire and smoke below. The Vorex swarm still flooded into the valley by the thousands, pouring over cliffs and charging through collapsing trenches. But the humans weren't retreating. They were shaping the battlefield. Every explosion happened exactly where they wanted it. Every defensive line bent without breaking. Human squads kept pulling backward through the canyon network with almost unnatural discipline, baiting the swarm deeper into the deadliest terrain on the planet. At first, VRN thought they were losing ground. Then she realized the truth. The humans were leading the enemy somewhere. A Nakari artillery officer suddenly pointed toward the tactical display. They abandoned Sector 12 intentionally. Another voice answered from behind him. No, the human advisor whispered. They emptied it. That single sentence changed everything. Because Sector 12 wasn't a retreat point. It was a kill zone. Far below the fortress, human engineers detonated hidden charges buried beneath the canyon floor. Entire rock walls collapsed inward with thunderous force, sealing thousands of Vorex creatures inside narrow choke points. Then the air itself ignited. Streams of blue flame erupted through underground fuel vents, turning the canyon into an inferno visible from orbit. The Nakari soldiers froze in disbelief. No civilized species fought wars like this. But humanity didn't seem shocked at all. To them, Chaos was normal. Viren finally understood why coalition commanders feared human warfare. Other civilizations relied on perfect plans and controlled engagements. Humans expected everything to go wrong. And they trained for it. One wounded Earth Marine sat against a shattered barricade reloading his rifle with one arm while medics dragged civilians behind cover. Blood soaked through his armor, yet he laughed when another explosion shook the canyon. A N'Akari medic stared at him in horror. "You're injured." The Marine barely looked up. "Yeah," he answered calmly. "Means I'm still alive." Then he stood back up and returned to the fight. That kind of mindset spread through the battlefield like fire. Human soldiers adapted instantly whenever the swarm evolved new attack patterns. If drones overwhelmed one route, humans collapsed the tunnel. If the enemy adapted to thermal weapons, Earth forces switched to kinetics within minutes. No hesitation. No panic. Only relentless adjustment. And the deeper the swarm pushed into the canyon system, the worse it became for them. Because Karen 9 itself was slowly transforming into a human battlefield. Avalanches buried entire Vorex columns. Gravity mines ripped creatures apart mid-charge. Narrow canyon passages forced massive swarm formations into close quarters where human marines excelled. Everywhere the enemy advanced, another trap waited. Then came the moment Viren would remember for the rest of her life. A refugee shuttle crashed near the southern trench line after taking enemy fire. The transport flipped onto its side while dozens of N'Akari civilians remained trapped inside. The swarm descended immediately. Human command ordered nearby squads to fall back. The position was collapsing. Anyone who stayed would die. But one human captain ignored the retreat order entirely. Viren watched him sprint through open gunfire with 6 soldiers behind him. They smashed through the shuttle hull and pulled civilians out one by one while Vorex creatures closed in from every direction. The captain carried a terrified N'Akari child under one arm while firing his rifle with the other. He could have escaped. Instead, he turned back for more survivors. Again. And again. By the time the final civilians reached safety, the humans were surrounded. The swarm attacked from all sides. Viren expected fear. Instead, the captain opened a direct comm channel to every nearby defense line. His voice stayed perfectly steady. "Nobody touches those civilians." Then the humans charged straight into the swarm. Not to survive. To buy time. The battle turned brutal. Close-range rifle fire echoed through the canyon while blades crashed against armor in clouds of dust and sparks. Human soldiers fought like people protecting family instead of strangers they had met hours earlier. And suddenly, Viren understood humanity's true advantage. It wasn't their weapons. It wasn't their ships. It wasn't even their endurance. Humans pack-bonded with anyone. The moment Earth forces saw frightened civilians, this stopped being somebody else's war. Now it was personal. That realization terrified her more than the battle itself. Because a species willing to die for strangers could become unstoppable. Then every tactical screen inside the fortress suddenly flashed red. Deep seismic readings spiked beneath the canyon floor. A human commander looked toward the underground maps and smiled faintly. "Perfect," he said. "Phase 2 starts now." The planet cracked open beneath the swarm. And for the first time in recorded history, the Vorex stopped advancing. A deep metallic roar thundered through the canyon network as hidden seismic charges detonated beneath Karen 9's surface. Entire cliffsides collapsed inward, swallowing thousands of biomechanical creatures in seconds. The ground itself became a weapon. Commander Viren barely kept her footing as shockwaves tore across the fortress walls. Below her, the canyon floor split apart into glowing fractures miles long while avalanches buried entire swarm battalions alive. Then human gunships descended through the smoke. Fast. Violently fast. Earth pilots dove between collapsing rock pillars with impossible precision, skimming canyon walls while unloading kinetic fire into trapped enemy formations. Explosions echoed so rapidly they sounded continuous. This was never a rescue mission. It was an execution. And humanity had spent the entire battle building the trap. Inside the tactical bunker, terrified coalition officers stared at the battlefield projections in disbelief. Human forces were deliberately driving the swarm deeper into unstable canyon corridors while orbital strikes collapsed every possible escape route behind them. One officer whispered what everyone else was thinking. They turned the whole planet into a battlefield. A human commander overheard him. Without looking away from the holomap, he answered quietly. No. His expression never changed. We turned it into a death world. That single sentence hit harder than the explosions outside. Because every species in the galaxy feared death world environments. Extreme gravity, unstable climates, constant natural disasters. Humans called it home. And now the swarm was trapped inside conditions humans understood better than anyone alive. The canyon storms intensified. Superheated winds screamed through narrow passages while volcanic vents erupted beneath advancing vortex formations. Human soldiers kept moving through the chaos almost instinctively, adapting to collapsing terrain faster than coalition computers could process it. The swarm tried evolving new armor. Humans changed ammunition. The swarm switched to aerial assault patterns. Human gunships baited them into thermal updrafts that shredded entire wings apart. Every adaptation met something worse waiting behind it. Then the battlefield shifted again. Warning sirens erupted across the fortress. Southern civilian shelters had been breached. Via Ren's blood ran cold. Nearly 40,000 civilians remained trapped underground beneath the canyon basin, including wounded refugees evacuated earlier in the battle. Emergency feeds showed swarm organisms tearing through blast doors while N'Akari defenders collapsed one corridor at a time. They wouldn't survive another 10 minutes. A coalition officer ordered immediate retreat from the sector. Human forces ignored him. Without hesitation, multiple Earth squads broke away from the main assault and disappeared into underground access tunnels beneath the city ruins. Via Ren stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They'll be cut off, she warned. The human commander beside her simply loaded fresh ammunition into his rifle. Yeah, he answered calmly. That's the point. Then he walked straight toward the tunnel entrance. The underground battle became pure chaos. Narrow corridors. Flickering emergency lights. Close-range gunfire echoing through steel walls. Human marines fought room to room against creatures built for slaughter. No clean formations remained. Just desperate violence inside smoke-filled tunnels while civilians ran behind them. A young N'Akari child cried beside a shattered medical station as Vorex drones closed in through the darkness. Then a human captain stepped between them. Armor cracked. Helmet damaged. Rifle nearly empty. But he didn't move. The captain opened a private comm channel to his remaining squad. Evac convoy reaches the surface no matter what. No one argued. They already knew. This was a last stand. The swarm hit them seconds later. The tunnel exploded into muzzle flashes and screaming metal. Human soldiers fought at point-blank range while civilians escaped deeper into evacuation routes behind them. Via Ren watched the live feed helplessly as one Marine dragged wounded strangers with one arm while firing with the other. Another detonated charges manually after losing remote access controls. Every second cost lives. But every second also bought civilians time. Then the captain looked directly into the battlefield camera. Blood covered half his armor. Still, he smiled. Not because he expected survival. Because the mission was working. Behind him, evacuation transports finally launched toward the upper canyon exits. Thousands escaped. The captain exhaled slowly and keyed one final transmission across all frequencies. Tell them Earth showed up. Then he detonated the tunnel. White fire swallowed the entire underground sector. The shockwave ripped through nearby canyon walls, collapsing millions of tons of rock directly onto the advancing swarm. Silence followed. For the first time since the invasion began. No enemy signals moved. No Vorex lifeforms advanced. Nothing. Across the battlefield, exhausted soldiers slowly emerged from smoke and rubble while burning debris drifted through the dark sky like falling stars. The swarm was gone. Destroyed. But victory carried a brutal cost. Human warships burned in orbit. Entire Earth battalions no longer answered comms. And somewhere beneath the ruins of Karen 9, thousands of human soldiers remained buried beside the enemy they stopped. Commander VRN stared across the shattered canyon in stunned silence. The galaxy had always feared humanity's violence. Now she finally understood the truth. The terrifying part wasn't how humans fought. It was what they were willing to sacrifice for people who weren't even their own. Then a damaged human carrier slowly turned toward open space. And deep beyond Coalition territory, another distress signal suddenly appeared. The war ended in silence. No victory music. No grand celebration. Only smoke drifting across the broken canyons of Karen 9. For 3 straight days, rescue teams searched through ash and collapsed tunnels while burned wreckage fell from orbit like black rain. Entire districts had vanished beneath the seismic collapse. The sky itself looked wounded. Commander VRN walked through the ruins expecting to find an occupying army. Instead, she found humans rebuilding shelters. Earth Marines carried injured N'Akari civilians through shattered streets beside their own wounded. Combat engineers restored power grids before repairing military systems. Human medics treated alien refugees without asking names, rank, or citizenship. No demands. No flags planted in the ruins. No speeches about glory. Just exhausted soldiers helping strangers survive. That confused the N'Akari more than the battle itself. Because every major power in the galaxy claimed territory after war, humans claimed responsibility. Near the southern canyon shelters, a young N'Akari child quietly approached a group of Earth soldiers resting beside a destroyed transport. The Marines immediately tensed, expecting fear. Instead, the child held out a small metal carving, a crude symbol of Earth's fleet. One of the soldiers accepted it carefully, almost awkwardly. "Thank you," the child whispered. The Marine looked down for a second before answering softly. "You're safe now, kid." Those 4 words spread through nearby civilians faster than any official announcement. "You're safe now." For the first time since the invasion began, people actually believed it. But beyond Karen 9, something even bigger was happening. Coalition worlds were receiving battlefield recordings from the war. Human drop assaults. Last stands inside evacuation tunnels. Earth soldiers shielding civilians with their own bodies while entire canyon systems burned around them. The footage spread across thousands of star systems within hours. And with every transmission, the galaxy's understanding of humanity began to change. For centuries, humans had been viewed as dangerous, unpredictable, violent, a species born from war and disaster. But now the truth became impossible to ignore. Humans weren't terrifying because they loved destruction. They were terrifying because they refused to abandon people once they chose to protect them. That realization shook entire governments. Coalition leaders replayed the same question over and over. What kind of species willingly walks into extinction-level wars? For strangers. No one had an answer. Not even the humans themselves. Inside orbit, the surviving Earth fleet prepared to leave. Only 7 ships remained operational. Several carriers drifted dark and silent beside repair stations, carrying thousands who would never return home. Yet even after those losses, human crews continued transmitting supply coordinates and evacuation routes to N'Akari settlements across the planet. Still helping. Still staying. Commander VRN eventually boarded the human flagship shortly before departure. She expected ceremony. Instead, she found tired crew members sleeping beside damaged equipment while engineers patched holes in corridor walls. The humans looked exhausted. Human. A senior Earth admiral stood near the observation deck staring at Karen 9 below. VRN approached slowly. "You saved us," she said quietly. The admiral didn't answer right away. Finally, he looked toward the burning planet beneath them. "No," he said. "You survived. We just made sure you had the chance." That sentence stayed with her. Because no species in the galaxy talked like that. Most civilizations measured power through conquest. Humans measured it through endurance. Through sacrifice. Through who they could carry out of the fire. As the fleet prepared for jump coordinates, thousands of N'Akari civilians gathered across the canyon ridges overlooking the sky. Families stood together in silence while damaged Earth warships slowly rose through the clouds. Nobody cheered. This moment felt bigger than celebration. It felt like history changing. Then one final transmission echoed across every communication channel on the planet. A recorded message from the human captain who died beneath the tunnels. If you're hearing this, it means you're still alive. Good. That was the whole point. Silence followed. Even hardened soldiers lowered their heads. Far above the atmosphere, the human fleet aligned for departure. A small N'Akari child standing beside Commander Viren watched the ships disappear into the stars. Then came the question nobody was ready for. Will humans come back if another world falls? Viren looked upward for a long moment. She remembered the fear humans inspired when they first arrived. Now she understood why. Not because humanity was the galaxy's most ruthless species. Because they were the ones willing to answer distress calls everyone else ignored. The commander's voice softened. No, she said quietly. The child looked confused. Then Viren watched the last human warship vanish into hyperspace. And finally finished the sentence. They'll arrive before it does. But deep beyond coalition space, another emergency signal was already spreading through the dark. And this time, humanity was already on the way.